When I was 15 years old, I got my first ever job at a local cafe, and it was pretty bare bones. There was a small counter, 8 metal chairs on the footpath outside, and the menu was nothing special. It had coffee, bagels, eggs, but there was one thing about this cafe that made it get immediate attention. And it's actually a timeless business lesson I want to share with you today and how it helped shape my path and how it could do the same for you. So the area I grew up in was a pretty conservative neighborhood. There was the local school, grocery stores, a bunch of cafes, the bus route, and the two owners of this cafe had to figure out how do we compete with lesser resources and in a sea of other cafes already doing business for customers. And they could have focused on, we'll make faster coffees or make better eggs, but they didn't. They leaned into what makes them unique. Now, the two owners, their names were Deborah and Deborah. So they named the cafe Double D's Cafe. That's a very cheeky name in a conservative neighborhood, and it raised eyebrows. I remember waiting these tables on a weekend morning, and people would walk by and look up at the sign, and some people would smirk and chuckle and come in for a coffee, and some people would look up at see the sign of Double D's Cafe and almost look at it with disgust, and then walk off, upset from it. And I remember thinking, why would they do this? Why would they have such a controversial and provocative name? And since that time, I've learned that a good message and good marketing and branding actually repels people just as much as it attracts. So the people that walked away are probably never going to be customers anyway. And those people that found it amusing and it picked up their interest actually became customers. But why that's the hardest decision you can make is it's so easy to blend in, to take the safe path and be more conservative. But being different, actually pushing the boundaries, is actually a lot harder to do. Because when you do that, you open yourself up for criticism because you're putting yourself out there, you're being out of the norm, out of different. And this is a very common business lesson, one which is best shown through Red Bull, which is the example from the late 1980s when they launched the company and this rumor got out about Red Bull, which was that Red Bull is made from bull's testicles. Now you can imagine the founder of that company, Diddy, was probably spooked. He just launched this company and now we've got this rumor about the energy drink. But you know what he did? Nothing. He just let that rumor hang out in the open and swell up all this PR and news about the brand. And why that's interesting is they could have shut that down very quickly, but they didn't because they knew that being different was very important for them and their branding. And Red Bull's done that exceptionally well over the last 40 years in building that brand. But coming back to our Double D's Cafe, they could have done the same thing. They could have gone for Deborah's Bakery or the Greenwich Cafe, but they didn't. They said, you know what, we need to be provocative and put ourselves out there. And that lesson sat dormant with me for a decade because in high school, I was a pretty average kid. I was maybe known for my basketball, but that was about it. And then after high school, I did what you meant to do. I went and got a business degree and I went into finance and I wore a suit and went up and down the elevators every day. But after a few years, I felt like I wasn't being true to myself and my path. And I was just blending in with millions of other finance people wearing suits, chasing the same dream. But I wanted to do something different. That's what I did. In 2014, I packed up all my stuff. I quit my job. I moved overseas and I changed my path completely. Because what I realized was blending in was the safe option. But it was actually on the outside, actually being different and putting myself out there was actually where the growth, the adventure, and the challenge was. And my question for you today is, are you blending in or are you being different? If you enjoyed this, let me know. I'll see you on the next one. You!